Miss Lynn. Thank you so much for joining me today on my channel. Let's just start with a little introduction to who you are and what languages you teach and speak and all of that.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Miss Lin, and many people know me from my Instagram or Facebook or YouTube by Miss Lin Chinese. And I'm from Hong Kong, but I'm teaching Mandarin and Cantonese and another channel for teaching French to Hong Kongers as well.
Yeah, I saw that as well. It's so interesting. So you have basically four languages that you're fully fluent in, as fluent as we get in languages, I suppose, enough to teach them. And so with your Mandarin and Cantonese, because those are your native languages, would you say that they're both native languages?
I would say they are almost like both of them are native, but initially,
Okay.
like in my family, they speak Cantonese. So I
Okay.
started to learn Mandarin when I was 6. So I think it's kind of like I started very early, so it's kind of like my
Yeah.
native as well.
Okay. What about English? Did you start around that age as well, or is
It's
that more
even
of a native?
earlier.
Okay.
Because we have in Hong Kong we have two official languages, Chinese and English.
Mm-hmm.
So we started
Yeah.
to learn English at kindergarten, but we didn't pay too much attention to it, so it was not as good as like in the US or in
Okay.
other places. Yeah.
Okay. So when you say the Chinese in Hong Kong, then it's all Cantonese for the most part. Are there
Yeah.
many people who also speak Mandarin in Hong Kong, or are they mostly Cantonese?
They are mostly Cantonese speakers, but
Yeah.
since Hong Kong was returned to China in 1997, so we started to have Mandarin in schools, and I mean, like the younger generation, they could speak Mandarin, but not quite sure for the older generation, like my parents, they just learn it afterwards. Yeah.
Okay. So with a younger generation, then you said in 97 they started. Are they are they learning Cantonese, Mandarin, and English in school?
Exactly.
All
Yes.
three? Okay. And then what about French? Where did that come from? How did you become interested in French?
That's a good question because many people asked me about this before, and they were so curious about it. And I started to learn it at university, so it
Okay.
was my major. But my major was European studies, but I study mainly French in this faculty. Yes, I started at like 18 years old.
Okay. And did you do that in Hong Kong? Your
Yeah,
university? Okay.
totally. My
But you're in
degree,
France, yeah.
my bachelor's degree was in Hong Kong. Yes.
Okay. And now you're in France, of course.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
did my
Yeah.
master's in France, so that's why I'm here now.
And your master's degree, what are you doing that in right now in France?
Actually, I did it in translation and
Okay.
also in international project negotiation. So I did 2 masters
Oh,
in
okay.
France. Yeah.
Okay, and those are done. You're finished with your master's
Finished,
degrees?
yes.
Okay, you're like, don't do that anymore.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was enough.
Okay. So do you feel like now you feel like all four of your languages are pretty much at the same level, or do you feel like some of them are higher or lower than others?
I would say for my English and French, now for speaking, they were roughly the same.
Okay.
But for obviously, like for listening, I think I'm stronger in French than in English, even though I study English for a long time. But if you show me a TV or film without any subtitles, like in English, very colloquial ones, I might have some difficulties, but not in French because I watch French news and TV shows every day. So yeah.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah, being in France. And how long have you been over there in France?
Like now, for now, it's about like 8 years already.
Oh, okay, so a little while.
Yeah.
So it's your new home, at least for the time being in France. You plan to stay over there?
Yeah, I plan to
Yeah.
really settle down here. I like
Yeah.
France. So.
And so for Mandarin and Cantonese, then you feel like those are about the same level?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So interesting. Now you have like so many so many languages. You speak more languages fluently than I do. So I'm very interested. I have a lot of languages, but only Spanish is really the only one that is at a very high English, of course, but Spanish is the only one that's at a very high fluency level. The others are in progress. It's like French and then Mandarin below that. Way below that. Yeah. French I can kind of get by in conversation a little bit, but Mandarin is beginner very much.
I think Mandarin is totally different. That's why you will have more struggles, but like Spanish, French, they're more similar.
Yeah, I also I've had more years of experience with Spanish and French than with Mandarin.
You started early, right, for Spanish, I guess?
I started in high school, but so like 15, 16, but I started over in college at age 19. So I've been like pretty seriously studying Spanish for about 10 years now. So
that's cool.
19 to 29, yeah.
That's so cool. I wish I had that in Hong Kong, but obviously Spanish and French, they have nothing to, they are not that important in Hong Kong. So people will look for like Japanese, Korean, but not European languages. Yeah.
I found though that quite a few people, at least when I was looking for Mandarin tutors and teachers, that there were a lot of them who spoke French as well. Like not Spanish, but French. Seemed to pop up pretty often. Yeah.
Wow. So I don't know them. I know just one or two, but I didn't know that.
Maybe in China it's different.
Yeah, they were different because they have more faculties offering foreign languages, so it's more common. But in Hong Kong, it's quite a small one. We don't have a lot of faculties, so that's why.
Yeah, definitely Japanese. So I know more. Yeah, we come up with Japanese.
Totally.
Yeah. So let's talk about characters.
Yeah. Sure.
Because I started studying Mandarin just last year. It's not even a whole year yet, and I have been taking it very slowly and practicing characters, and I'm just now starting to understand a little bit of the difference between simplified and traditional characters.
Which one do you study?
So I'm really into right now this practice book that I'm going through for kids, like kids work, and I've been going through them, and I believe these are, for the most part, simplified characters here.
Yeah, probably. I'm not sure because some of the characters they share in common, so you have 60% in common. So,
but the cool thing is that in the back they have this. They have both.
Oh, that's cool.
So I haven't gotten to these yet because I'm like halfway, maybe a little more than halfway through this. But yeah, in the back they do both. And so I guess one of my questions here is, do all of these words have a traditional and a simplified, or do some of them just have one?
Actually, 60% of them share the same. So that means you only have to study the rest of it in both characters. Yes.
Yeah, and I think it is good to know both because I know some people say, oh, I'm studying simplified or I'm studying traditional, but you're really going to need to know both because they can just pop up in places, like at least to be able to recognize them.
Totally. Because you will have, for example, if you watch some dramas, because many of the learners, they watch this Chinese drama, but it could come from like Taiwan or Hong Kong. While you have some in China, then they will use simplified. So.
And then Taiwan, in the traditional ones.
Exactly.
So you learned both. Did you learn both in school? Do they teach? Well, you learned Cantonese primarily, and Cantonese uses traditional, right?
Cantonese uses both depending on where you are. So if you are studying the Guangdong, like the Chinese Cantonese, so it will be in simplified because it's in China, while Hong Kong will use the traditional one. Yeah.
Okay.
So the character system is a part. Then the language is another thing. Yes.
Yeah. Because the characters are all for the most part the same all the way across the like Cantonese and Mandarin, and even even Japanese, some of the same characters are used in there too.
Because they create their own system based on Chinese characters, and their characters is a mix of simplified, traditional, and their own characters.
Yeah, and they have
so cute. It's fun.
So yeah, so I think it actually is nice to start with, let's say, Chinese, all of the characters of the writing at least, and then adding on like simplified and adding on tradition, or having the simplified and traditional, and then my plan later is to add on Japanese. But I feel like they all kind of work together, and if you start with the Chinese,
together,
you start with simplified, and then you add on a little bit, you already have some of the pieces there.
Exactly. And most of the time, my students, they will opt for only one type of characters, but at some point, they will add the second one if they are interested in going to, for example, Taiwan. Then they study simplified and they change to traditional later. So I think it's good to start earlier if you can. Then you will be able to read everything. Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting in this too, because this is meant for, I guess it's meant for little kids. It says super speak junior, so it's like a little kids book. So I think that is the idea then, to start at the beginning with the different characters and simplified and traditional. And I think that I think it ultimately, you can do it either way. It's just a matter of preference. Probably I don't have the experience you do with the language, but I think for me, I think it's nice to start with both, to have that awareness.
Some people are so afraid, so they start with the simplified one because there are less strokes. But I would say there are more logics in the traditional one, because simplified is based on the traditional and they take away some parts of it, some components of the character. So it makes more sense when you have to explain the traditional characters.
Yeah, that makes sense, to start with traditional then, and then to have the simplified ones, because then it's not like it's like you learn a little bit more and then you simplify it essentially. So it's like it's called simplified. Yeah.
That's what we did in Hong Kong.
Yeah. So do you guys learn then in the schools in Hong Kong? Do you learn with pinyin when you're learning Chinese? You just learn the characters? Because I know when I was talking to Cecilia from Taiwan, they have Juyin, and you guys don't have anything. You just learn characters.
Yeah, that's very weird, but nobody knows about it in China or Taiwan. That in Hong Kong, basically we learn just with characters, and we imitate the sounds. We don't learn any phonetic system. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just pure memorization. You look at the character, remember it.
Right. Yeah. Listen and make the links, connection between the meaning, character, and the sound. Yeah.
And so when you teach, do you use pinyin?
Yes, I teach mainly with pinyin. I don't know anything about Zhuyin. It's only used in Taiwan, so
I think just Taiwan. It's so far.
I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, it's so interesting how each of the Chinese speaking, not even just the countries, like even in the countries they're divided, but how each dialect and countries have such unique systems for learning the language. Like that Taiwan developed its own basically phonetic system. Yeah. And then so for you guys it's more of just memorization of each of those. And I mean, I guess either one can work. But for foreign language then, using pinyin, do you think that is like, do you think that pinyin is more useful than just learning the sounds? Like, I guess this is the question of learning a language as a native language versus learning it as a foreign language. Because for you, especially since you learned it just with memorization, like how native languages are for the most part learned that way, and then we use pinyin for foreign language. What do you think the experience would be like for foreigners learning Mandarin with that memorization method like you guys use for kids?
I do think that you guys are so brave. because when I was little, I also learned starting from age of 6. I learned with pinyin, so it was new to me as well. But I do think pinyin is necessary, in the sense that you need to have something to base on that makes you feel less nervous. And well, of course, you can have some influence from English or other languages when you see the alphabets. But I do think it's a good way to learn instead of just imitating, because you have tones as well. And how do you explain the tones without all these like phonetic symbols?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think that that really comes down to like skill transferring between languages, and that now that you already have the ability to read and write and speak and listen in English, let's say, and then you're learning Mandarin, to use that so that you don't have to just memorize the characters. You can use that to simplify the process.
Yeah, to make it like faster and easier, and psychologically you're more attached to the alphabets, right?
Yeah, I think so too, because little kids, when they're learning, they don't know anything yet. So if you just say, okay, this means this, then they say, okay, that's what it means. I need to learn it. And they don't have anything else.
And they don't challenge the system because they just accept it like absorb everything like a sponge.
For the first few years, at least, yeah. Then they start to question things. Then they start to say, no, I don't want to do that.
But for example, like it's just a question. Like when you learn Spanish later, then does it confuse you with the alphabets? That's the question. I mean, like when you see the Spanish alphabets, do you tend to think in English at first, like for the first few months?
I think that I did, but it's so similar to English, and it's easier to like to speak Spanish than English, because you just read it and pronounce it. It's very much just pronounced like it looks, and it's not like English. You're like, okay, I have to remember that this word's pronounced this way, even though these letters usually make a different sound. But they're
it's true.
not like that, and it's quite a bit easier, and it's easier to learn new words, because you just sometimes I can just guess words in Spanish, like based on English or French, and sometimes I invent them. Sometimes I'm like, oh, this is the word, and sometimes it doesn't work. But for the most part, it works just because of the similarities between the languages, and then because Spanish is just simpler as
Pretty
far as pronouncing. French is more challenging. And the Spanish does help with French, though, because of the conjugation system. That was the thing for me, learning how to conjugate verbs. And because and then learning like masculine and feminine, all of the things that don't exist in English.
And you already have the logic from Spanish.
And so Spanish, then those skills transfer over to French, which has made learning French quite a bit easier, although it's still challenging because of the pronunciation, and because of there's more complex grammar rules and exceptions, more of like the English side. But having English and Spanish is nice, because French is kind of draws on the two of them a bit.
Okay. I do the reverse. That's why now I'm thinking like Spanish is not that easy for me, but I get the
you're
French
learning
logic.
Spanish. Yes, we didn't talk about that in the beginning, that you're learning Spanish too.
So I put the logic back to Spanish, but I find it very difficult to pronounce everything in Spanish, because I tend not to pronounce the last syllable in French. So that's the reverse difficulty.
It's just training. Training yourself to not use all of those same Spanish rules. And I do that in Spanish. With French, sometimes I will just apply the rules over to French, and then sometimes there's a word missing, or like with the articles or the indirect object pronouns, and I'll use the Spanish rules, and I'll just guess it in French, and then like, no, that's not right, or pronounce something that shouldn't be pronounced. But it's still useful, though, because it gets you started. And then you just slowly, work at refining it, and eventually you get somewhere with it. And that's as much as you can hope for.
But we are kind of in a similar situation.
So I don't think I mentioned Spanish in the beginning. So when did you start studying Spanish?
2 months ago.
Oh, okay. So it's brand new. Okay, It's gonna be it's gonna be messy right now. Very messy.
I don't understand much from what
Yeah.
people talk about, and I'm
Mhm.
just learning something. I do a lot of reading. Reading is
Of
easier
course.
because it looks like English or
Mhm.
French, so that will be okay.
It is a lot easier in that way. Yeah, learning Mandarin has definitely been much more challenging because it's just the initial like writing characters and looking at,
Yeah,
something completely different.
yeah,
But now I feel like it's like I feel somewhat comfortable with the characters and things like that. But I've just spent a long time at level 1, like HSK 1, and I'm just happy here, just starting to feel like just writing the characters. I know most people don't really spend. I think most people don't spend a ton of time at HSK 1 because they want to go onto the next level, and they don't necessarily get all the writing down
that's
for their
true.
characters.
That's true.
But
Yeah,
um,
I can
yeah.
assure you that I have a student from Norway and I
Mhm.
interview him on my channel as well.
Oh, okay.
And he told, well, at the beginning he was so into speaking, so he
Mhm.
just ignored the writing
Oh,
part. And then I think at HSK 2, then he started to realize that he had to get back his characters in order to go
yeah.
further, and he struggled a lot, a lot. Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
but
that can happen. That's why I'm okay with having spent like basically I'm gonna have spent an entire year on HSK 1, but it's okay because we've got the
yeah,
writing that I can write, and then going into the next stages, and it's so much easier once you've built that foundation.
totally. You have to be
Yeah.
patient.
Hmm. Yeah, you put in the time in the beginning, and then it goes quickly. And either way, somewhere the time has to go in. But
Yeah.
with Spanish, it's much easier because there's not that, like,
There's
it's the
no
same. It's the
writing.
same.
Well,
Yeah, it's the same. There's nothing that you're really going to see in Spanish that you haven't seen in French or English as far as the letters go, except maybe ñ. I have like a little, I don't think French
yeah,
has that.
the little.
Yeah, but that's just like a little thing. It's not it's not like, oh, look at these letters and look at these characters. It's not so
You don't have to
drastic.
learn how to write it, but I have to
Mhm.
learn how to type it because I don't know how to type
Oh, yeah.
the accents, and I have to just search for some code. Like I have to use some special key and
Mhm.
then and type the numbers to
Yeah.
get the symbol.
It's not like French. You don't have you don't use the same typing system for French,
No, because I have a French keyboard.
but don't they still have the accents? Like they
They
still have
have the
accents over
accents,
the
but not
vowels.
all of them are the same as in
Oh,
Spanish. So I still have to
hmm.
get some special thing to
Yeah, that's true. And they have some different ones in Spanish. They have the little
yeah, the
for
thing.
for French. So I just use actually, I think it's all it's just an accent. It's like I think it's all it's like it's in
Yeah,
my
alt
head, but
something
yeah, all
zero something.
accent, and then no, you don't even need the numbers. You just need the if well, I have an English keyboard, but
Yeah.
you just need the apostrophe here, the alt, and then the apostrophe, and then the letter. That's it. That's how
Ah,
it's.
you just add the
That's
yeah, I
it.
did it. I did it
Yeah.
for French when I have a English keyboard, but I can't find the same for
Yeah.
Spanish. Maybe it
Yeah.
doesn't work on French keyboard. I don't know.
Oh, maybe, but that's how I do mine, and it's really simple. And I, but I do have something that I lay over my keyboard. Oh man, it's really cool, but it's like in this mess
Wow.
up. I bet it's in this Spanish section here. Hang on, I gotta.
You have everything.
I do, but oh man, where did it go? I have a keyboard overlay that has all of the Spanish
Ah,
keys
you have
in it. Yeah. And
ah,
so basically, what I did is look up the accents and some of the different,
yeah.
there are some different numbers and the different symbols, but they are, I guess I need
Did
to
you
reorganize
memorize them?
myself. Yeah, and I somewhat memorized them, but you can change the keyboard over to, like right now mine's in English, and then you can set it so that it's in Spanish or French or however you
Yeah,
want
then you
to do
have to
that.
get a map at first, like which
Yeah.
key is for which
Mm-hmm.
alphabet.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's actually gonna drive me crazy that I can't find that now because it was right here. I keep it right here all the time, and now it has disappeared. But it's a clear piece, like it's like a silicone
Ah,
overlay, and then I put it over my keyboard and I wrote on it so that it
ah,
has the code. So then when I change the language, I just put it over the top.
That's so
And,
good.
and then it has I wrote on it with Sharpie so then I can just type on it. And then
Oh,
when I'm done, I pull it off. And
I should
yeah.
get the same.
Yeah. So I don't know where it went, but I'll find it. And I'll put it up.
And show me later.
Yeah, actually, you know what I'll do is link to this video. I have a blog post I created like way back, like a year or two ago, where I had that like step by step how I created all that. So
Oh,
I'll
that's
link
cool.
that in this video on
Yeah.
YouTube as well. So anyone who's watching this, you guys can check that out and see how to type accents and codes and all of that. And now we are going to head on over to Instagram.
Yeah,
So
sure.
the rest of this conversation is going to be on Instagram. And if you are watching this here on YouTube first, there will be replay over on Instagram that you can come and check out to see the rest of this conversation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, and I will see you over on Instagram.
No problem. See you. Bye-bye.